If you're struggling with some aspects of downward facing dog, so maybe you've come to the posture with tight hamstrings, so you feel the stretch in the legs, or perhaps you really feel it in the upper body. We're bearing weight through the hands, the arms and the shoulders, and if that's something you're not so familiar with, then that can feel really tough. Also, if you're practising Ashtanga or some form of Vinyasa Flow regularly, you come to downward facing dog many, many times. So it's worth revisiting. I'm looking again to see if there's more you can get out of it, if you can use it to help you build stronger foundations, or if maybe you've just got into a habit or a pattern of movement that is not so helpful. And I know there's some chat around downward facing dog in Vinyasa Flow being a resting posture, and I don't know if I'm so sure about that, because in my experience, down dog's strong, and while after time and practice it becomes steady, there's still a lot going on in it. So I guess it depends what you mean by resting. But anyway, what I wanted to do today was take a look at some aspects of downward facing dog. So not in the sense that what you've been doing up until now, or maybe been doing up until now, is in any way wrong, but maybe just giving you a different perspective or another way to explore this movement through the body, and as a result, hopefully deepening your understanding and enhancing your physical experience of this posture that comes up time and time and time again. So I'm going to look at kind of three main areas. First up, we'll look at the upper body. Then we'll look at the centre of the body, the pelvis, and then I'll take a look at the legs. So this first one, the upper body, a way of working with downward facing dog. This was a real game changer for me. It was an Iyengar teacher that shared this with me. And as someone who struggled with the upper body strength and stability element of down dog, this really helped, and it played out in lots of different postures as well. So my jump backs and jump throughs, my arm balances, back bending, Urdhva Dhanurasana, that lift, headstand, where we're looking for action and stability through the shoulders to balance, essentially on the forearms with the head lightly touching. So let's have a look. Now, reaching forward with hands, sit in the heels and reach forward with the hands, and this gives us a fairly good distance between the hands and the feet. I know that different teachers teach slightly different lengths, some longer, some shorter, but for the sake of these exercises, then this is a good rule of thumb. So reaching out with the hands, and the hands are shoulder width apart here. We're going to come up onto the knees, tuck the toes under, the feet are hip width apart, and we're going to lift the knees just an inch or two off the floor, and then press the chest back through towards the thighs and beginning to straighten the legs. So just taking this first downward facing dog and maybe just noticing where you're feeling it. Okay, so the tendency here is to sink towards the floor, but we can work in a different way that's going to bring more strength, stability, awareness around the work in the upper body. So what I'm going to ask you to do is lift the heels and bring the weight forward into the hands. So we're not going into plank here, so the bum can stay high. And I want you to bend your elbows, so really over-exaggerate it. Okay, really bend the elbows, and keeping the elbows bent and keeping the hands flat on the floor, we're going to draw the elbows around to point towards the feet. Now you might find here that as you do that, the hands start to lift up. So really trying to reach down
through the first two fingers and drawing the elbows around so they point. And they're still really bent here, you can see. And already this is really hard work. Okay, and we're going to try and keep that action as we then press the chest back through towards the thighs and look towards the navel. So initially the arms will stay bent, but as we practice this movement, we can begin to straighten the arms and keep the action through the shoulders, through the upper body. And coming forward, bringing the knees to the floor. Okay, so the action we were looking for there was the hands were flat on the floor. And what I asked you to do was bend your elbows out to the side. Draw them around so they pointed towards your toes. And then keeping that action, straightening them again. So we'll take that again. I'll turn around so you can see what it looks like from the front. And what to do this time that you now you're familiar with where I'm going with it, is notice what happens in the upper body and the shoulders. And in particular, trying to notice where your shoulders are in relation to your ears. So I'll just turn around here. So reaching out. And taking downward facing dog. So we've not tried to change anything so far, just noticing the upper body, the shoulders, and where they are in relation to the ears. And then we're going to bring the weight forward. Bend those elbows, so really over exaggerating. Keeping them bent, draw them around to point towards the toes. And then pressing the chest back through towards the thighs. Trying to keep the first two fingers flat on the floor. Keep drawing those elbows around and slowly beginning to straighten the arms and noticing now the orientation of the shoulders. Notice what you're feeling through the upper body and the shoulders. So there's definitely an intensity in working with that, and it may be that you can only sustain it for a breath or two initially, but the idea is that we slowly build up our stamina, our endurance in moving in that way. And like I say, it really changed things for me where I needed that strength and stability through the upper body and through the shoulders. So give it a go and let me know how you got on with that. So like I say, that is intense, it's strong, but slowly build up your capacity to stay working in that way. So the next thing I want to look at, like I said, is the pelvis, the centre area of the body. And again, we're going to take another exercise just to help us explore and experience what's going on there. So again, reaching out with the hands are shoulder width apart. Taking your downward facing dog. Maybe even looking for elements of that first exercise we did. So what I want you to do here is lift the heels and bend the knees. And we're going to try and do a cat-cow movement with the pelvis. So what I want you to do is scoop the tummy, curl the tailbone under, and arch the spine. So we're really curling under. Then we're going to go the other way. So tilting the tailbone up towards the ceiling, hollowing out the back and looking up beyond the hands. So let's try that a couple of times. The knees are bent, allowing us quite a degree of movement through the pelvis. Good. And now we're going to try and take downward facing dog again. And we're going to try that action again. So it's a little bit limited now that the legs are straighter and we're working through the upper body. But just trying there to tuck under and tilt the tailbone up. Tuck under and tilt the tailbone up. So what I want you to do is try and find the midpoint. The point where you're not tucking under and you're not tilting. So the reason I asked you to bend your knees initially is that if the hamstrings and the back of the legs are tight, there's no movement to be had. So bending the knees just allows the pelvis to move a little bit. So maybe if you've got really tight hamstrings, right tight down the back of the legs, you need to bend the knees a little bit to help you find that mid point for the pelvis. So the tailbone's not sticking up in the air, but we're not curled under, because you can feel how if we curl the tailbone under, we begin to arch the spine. And quite often what happens, if the hamstrings are tight and you're given the instruction to straighten the legs, as you straighten the legs, the spine has to arch out to accommodate the pelvis. Okay. So, midsection, the pelvis, not too scooped out in the back with the tailbone sticking up in the air, and not too scooped under where the back rounds out. So we're trying to find that midpoint. And when I say a midpoint, it's not where no effort is happening. Actually, effort is happening in both directions to bring us to the centre there. And the last thing I'm going to look at is some action through the legs. And this is particularly helpful if you've got the legs straight already. If the knees are bent, you're tight through the back line, through the hamstrings, that's where you're working. What we want to do when the legs are straight is still be able to work through the legs, still be able to get some benefit of working through the legs. So rather than just jamming the knees back and letting the legs switch off, this is something else you can think about. So we're reaching forward with the hands, coming up into downward facing dog, into your downward facing dog. Now what I want you to do is lift both heels off the floor, and as if you're moving through resistance. So imagine the heels are maybe pressing down onto a strong spring, or through syrup, you're going to press the heels down. So we're not just kind of dropping them down there. There's resistance there, and you're having to work really hard to press the heels into the floor, and noticing what's happening in the legs there. Okay, so let's try that again. Lifting the heels. Now pressing down into resistance. Like I say, imagine there's a spring there. It's a really strong one, and you're having to really push to get the heels to the floor, and noticing what happens all the way up the legs as you do now. Now I'm hoping that you felt some activation, some effort happening up the legs, rather than the leg muscles being able to check out as gravity takes the heels to the floor. Now we're going to do that again, and I'm going to add another bit of, I guess it's imagination or visualization. So as we press the heels down against resistance, I want you to imagine that you're pulling on a really tight support sock. So as the heels go down, they reach away, there's this sense of a drawing up through the legs. So one of those really tight support socks that you wear when you're flying, all the way up the leg. So as the heels go down through resistance, we're drawing up through the leg. So let's try that. Taking your downward facing dog. lifting the heels. Now the heels are going down against resistance, and we're going to imagine you're drawing up one of those really tight support socks. Okay, bend the knees a little bit, release. Let's try that again. So inhale to lift the heels. And exhale slowly, heels down as you draw up the legs. And again, notice what happens all the way up the legs, even into the centre of the body. Let's do that one more time, lifting the heels. And exhale, heels down against resistance, even as you're drawing up through the legs. Now we're going to hold here and keep drawing up through the legs. Keep the effort going through the centre of the body to find the centre. And look for a little bit of that action through the upper body. And breathe. Release. So as you can feel, a lot of effort in downward facing dog, and I'm hoping that at least some of that has given you a new way to explore downward facing dog, maybe to find something there that you hadn't found before. As always, let me know how you get on, and if you've got any questions, please do get in touch. Thanks very much.